we've been doing over the summer is we've been looking at the parables of Jesus. Before we get into the specific parable we're going to get into tonight, I have just a really important question that's maybe going to divide the room. How many of you are really good at following instructions? Okay? I mean, okay, perfect. How many of you are the people that you just take that manual and you throw it in the trash because you know how to do it, okay? All right, I'm that person. I'm like, I can see it. Look at the box. I know how to do it. So instructions are a very important thing that a lot of people want to know, the really specific instructions, and other people don't care about that. When I was, before I actually came here to New York, one of the jobs I had was as a 5th grade science teacher. I know it's a little bit of a random job that I had, but it was a lot of fun because we got to do experiments with the kids. And I'll never forget because there was one specific day where I'm going through this whole experiment we're going to do with the kids, where we're learning about speed. You know, you put distance over time, and that's what speed is. You know, you put your miles for how many hours, that's how you get it. But we didn't have a car, so I was like, we're going to do our best with this. So I told all the kids, you're going to divide up into pairs, and I gave them all a ruler, I gave them a little race car, I gave them a stopwatch and a rubber band so they could take that car, they could just kind of wind it up and see how fast they can get it to go. And we wanted to try different surfaces. So I told them, go throughout the room, and I want you to put it on the carpet, put it on your desk, put it on your textbook. But if you remember back to school, and maybe if you don't remember this, you might have been this person, there's that one crazy kid who's just got the way that they hear the instructions, and their mind just turns it into this beautiful Picasso piece of just chaos. And so I had that one chaotic student who I knew, I was aware of this, and I was like, all right, I know what to do. I'm going to pair him up with my most competent student. I mean, like the most type A. This kid followed every single rule. I was like, if I put these two together, clearly this has got to work. And boy, was I wrong, because I give the kids all their supplies, I send them out into different spots, and I'm like, okay, you're going to go here, you're going to go here. And this group, we opened up the door, they're right outside the hallway. I'm like, nothing can go wrong. I'm checking on group 1, group 2, and then as soon as I open up the door to look out in the hallway, I see my chaotic student. His shirt is off, he's lying on the ground, they put the ruler and the NASCAR on his back, and he's like, quick, he's here, fire it as fast as you can. Because they wanted to see how fast could the car go on his back. Can I tell you, it didn't work, and I had to write so many emails to so many parents explaining these were not the instructions of the experiments, but because we had one chaotic person, that's where we were at. And so today, we're going to be looking at a specific moment when somebody had a really specific instruction. They wanted to know, okay, well, what do I really got to do here? So before we fully get into the parable, I need to just give you some of the context. You'll see this whenever you tap your phone, there's a spot you can actually get some of the sermon notes as well as some of the lyrics. You see they're available in English and Spanish, but we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 10, and we're going to be looking at the setup for probably one of the most famous parables that gets used and quoted in so many contexts, even if it's not in church. So Luke 10, 25 through 29 says this. One day, an expert in religious law, this was a lawyer at the time, stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question. He said, "Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus replied, "What does the law of Moses say? How do you read it?" And the man answered, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "Right," Jesus told him. "Do this and you will live." The man wanted to justify his actions, so he asked Jesus, this is the big instruction question, "And who is my neighbor?" Who is my neighbor? Can I tell you, this man is not asking this question because he's actually concerned. The lawyer wanted to know so that he could get the instruction exactly right, so that he knew exactly who was his neighbor and who wasn't his neighbor. And Jesus has a pretty big response on this, but this is a thing that I think almost each and every one of us can wrestle with at some point or another, the question of who is my neighbor. And more so, if you're like me, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands because I love you, us introverts, man, my neighbor, I don't need to see them. I don't need to know them, okay? We're good. We're fine. We came here to leave, okay? We're good, all right? If you're an extrovert, like, you're good. I still love you too, okay? A lot of people think I'm an extrovert, all right? I've had to train, okay? Every day I have to look in the mirror and I say, hi, all right? I have to do my best, okay? I trained for this, all right? But I'm saying this, I think the natural drift and inclination for a lot of us is isolation. is we kind of want to stay to ourselves. We don't, and whether or not you can be and let me tell you this, I've met extroverts that are so outgoing, so social, and yet you still don't know who they are. Because as people, there's such an easy drift towards just wanting to set up a wall so that we don't get hurt, to the point where the question isn't, who is my neighbor? The question is, who do I actually have to talk with? Who do I have to start a relationship? Who do I actually have to care for? Because I think if it came down to a lot of us, we would want to isolate. And this isn't just something that we see as a tendency that can happen for human beings. This is actually the result of sin in our world. I mean, the actual result of sin is to isolate us from relationships. We see this in the very beginning of the Bible. As sin entered the world and human beings decided they didn't need a relationship with God, they isolated from God, and then they started to isolate from each other to the very point where they start isolating from themselves. They can't see God correctly. They can't see each other correctly. They can't see themselves correctly. We as human beings, left to our own devices, drift and go down to a spot where it is just us alone. To that type of a question right there where somebody's saying like, all right, you have to love your neighbor. Fine. Who is it? Who do I have to care about? Who is it specifically that I have to? This right here is the question that we as human beings ask, and it's not the question that Jesus gives us as an answer. Because, whenever Jesus responds to a lot of things, he doesn't often give us the type of answer that we would like. And so we're going to look at this parable in a second, but let me just set you up with exactly what the whole premise of this message is. Because the question isn't, who is my neighbor? The question is something that, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and it's a question we used to ask all the time growing up. And in Pittsburgh, let me tell you something, I have 3 things I'm very proud of that I am just diehard about, okay? Number 1, it's Heinz ketchup, all right? Because we invented Heinz ketchup. We have a whole museum dedicated to it. And you might say that's extra, but the next time you compare ketchups, let me just tell you, Heinz is it, okay? Second thing is the Steelers, and I will stay a Steelers fan until the Jets and Giants start doing well, okay? And then I will transfer over, but we're not there yet, all right? You can fight me on that, but listen, I'm sorry, okay? But the third thing that we have is this, Mr. Rogers. You might not have known this, but this guy is actually from Pittsburgh. That's where he grew up. And there was a specific question he would ask. And I kid you not, when I was doing my studying on this passage, as far as how Jesus responds back to this lawyer's question, he almost phrases it like this. Instead of, who is my neighbor? The question is, will you be my neighbor? Or as if you've ever seen Mr. Rogers, the question is, won't you be my neighbor? If you haven't seen that, please Google it later, okay? Because that just felt really, the silence was really deafening there, okay? But listen, that right there is the heart of this parable we're about to read. That right there is the heart of Jesus. Not who's your neighbor, but won't you be my neighbor? Won't you be, what, can we have a relationship? Can we be friends? Can I love you? Can I support you? So this parable that we're going to read, you might have heard of it. You might have heard of what it's called. It's called the Good Samaritan. It's a parable that is used in so many times. It's actually something that here in New York, we have a law about it. It's called a Good Samaritan law, okay? Meaning that if you see something, you're supposed to actually do something. Otherwise, you could potentially have some problems occur for you. This is something that everybody can look at. We know the phrasing of it, but today we're going to actually look at it and try to understand what does this parable mean for us as far as looking at other people and having them as our neighbors. So this parable comes from Luke chapter 10, verses 30 through 37. I want to read this for you. It says, Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, "Take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here." Now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked, and the man replied, "The one who showed him mercy." Then Jesus said, "Yes, now go and do the same." is probably one of the simplest parables that we've been able to go over this entire summer. It's that same heart of the question of, hey, won't you be my neighbor? And I want to give you just a few thoughts whenever we're trying to answer this question. What does that actually look like? Because I know for us, if we were to live at life at such an extreme level like this, we would feel overburdened. We would feel like a lot. And the goal of this is not that you feel like you have to do everything. The goal is that you feel empowered so that you know you can do something. Because each and every one of us are able to be a neighbor to someone who needs it, even if it's as simple as you staying for just an extra 10 minutes downstairs to be able to say hi to somebody. You have no idea how much that can mean to one person. How many times have you heard it over and over again about people who live here saying, hey, we're so lonely? It could take 10 minutes for you to change that. But I want to give you a few thoughts of what we can do to actually be a good neighbor, to be able to help people out. The first one is that we have to do this. We have to look outside of our circle. Whenever we're looking at this context again, whenever Jesus is using these two people groups, he is using something very, very important. Now, I don't know if this is legit because I'm still new here. I'm a transplant. But from what I've heard, understanding the difference between a Jew and a Samaritan is kind of like somebody from New York and New Jersey. I don't know if we're like if one group despises the other, okay? But what I've heard is that one group doesn't like the other, okay? But it's much worse than that whenever we look at it in biblical times. We saw that Jews and Samaritans, it wasn't just one doesn't like the other. Literally, they both were at odds to such an extent that if you were a Jew, you're looking at a Samaritan being like, you have no idea what it means to follow Jesus. You have no idea anything about the Bible. Everything in your life, your theology, everything is off, and vice versa. They were constantly coming at each other. They did not like each other. So for us, when we're looking at this, I think it's important we have to understand we need to look outside of our own circles. Think about this for a second, who your circle is, because I think each and every one of us at some point or another probably have some people in our lives that we're like, these are my people and these aren't my people. These are the people I'm going to associate with and these are the ones I'm not. And let me just get uncomfortable for a second. That means that it might be some people outside of your own political party. It might be some people that you're like, I hate what they believe. I hate what they stand for. I hate their lifestyle. That's not the point. Jesus doesn't say, hey, your neighbor should be the people that you agree with, the people that everything on paper, your life lines up with. Your neighbor, in terms of the person that you are supposed to love and encourage and support, is whoever is around you, whoever you would come into contact with. But I see a lot of us that we build a circle and we stay inside the circle. We protect the circle. We make sure nobody gets into the circle unless they have been through the background checks and they have gone through all the things, and we like all the same movies and we go to all the same places. Man, it is really specific what we all need in order to say these are my people and these aren't, and that's not how Jesus tells us to live our lives. In fact, it's quite opposite of the way that Jesus, in fact, still is with us today. I don't see him picking and choosing and saying, I like these people and I don't like those people. Jesus himself is one where he says, won't you be my neighbor? Won't you allow me into your life to be able to love you, to be able to care for you, to be able to hold space in what's going on in your life? It requires us, first and foremost, to look outside of our circle. The second thing that we see in here is that we have to look for people who are hurting. For further context on here, the first two people that were going by, we saw the priest and this temple assistant. Typically, if you were listening to this story, it wasn't like these guys were on their way to work and they're busy and they're like, I got to just get there on time. I can't stop for this guy. Most likely, if you were listening to this story and you heard it, these were two guys that were leaving from work. They had nothing to get to. There was no great agenda in front of them. They had time, but they didn't have space in their hearts. Because for them, they were like, I don't even want to deal with this. I don't want to even bother with this. We have to look for people who are hurting. Can I tell you this for a second, though? Looking for people that are hurting requires proximity. Here's what I mean by this, okay? Because this happened literally a few days ago, where my wife and I had just moved into this new apartment, and I remember I went out to the window, and I'm looking, and I'm like, Seal, what's wrong with that kid over there? There's this kid on the balcony just spazzing out, and he's just like jumping around and doing all this weird stuff, and I'm like, is he okay? Is he about? And she was like, there's an iPad right in front of that kid. Open up your eyes. Like, he's clearly playing a game. And I was like, oh, okay. Meaning this, there are a lot of us that we cannot tell who is actually in pain until we're close enough. There's a lot of people that you and I think are absolutely hysterical, so funny, that are crying out on the inside saying, would somebody just see me and know me? You will not be able to fully know until you are close. These guys, literally some of the interpretation of it is that they thought, this guy, why would we touch him? He's dead on the side of the road. Why? We don't need to deal with it. Let's just keep going. There's people that you and I are unaware of that are hurting right now. Could I be so bold as to say you probably have some family members that have been in pain for years that we just wouldn't know? It's sad. I've experienced this for myself, even as I have these moments whenever you explore and you understand some of the family lore that goes on, and you're like, oh, mom and dad were going through that. That's what it was like for you growing up. This starts to make sense. Things start to line up. We don't know what's going on unless we're close. I wonder how much stuff we forfeit, how many moments, how many relationships, how many opportunities to be a neighbor to somebody else we've missed because I will not put myself in a spot where I will be truly close, vulnerable, even to be known by somebody else. It requires that we're close, and it requires us being a good neighbor, that we are looking for people who are hurting so that we can help, so that we can encourage, so that we can love. Is this not what Jesus did all and all throughout the Bible? Is this not why people look at Jesus and say, what a remarkable man? People from other religions that don't even think that Jesus is the way can still look at Jesus and say, yeah, but that guy was pretty remarkable. He did some amazing stuff because he was looking for people who were hurting, not just people who thought that they were healthy. And that's what you and I have to do in order to be a good neighbor. As I'm not looking and saying, okay, cool. I'm going to look for people who are outside of my circle, who have it all together, people who look perfect, who I aspire to. No, it's the people who need a neighbor. You work with them right now. You have them, some of them in your life. You have them as family members that you might have cut out of your lives, and maybe a little bit too soon. Because just maybe the heart we have to have is one of saying, I think I should be there in your life. I think I should be your neighbor. I think I should help you out practically to be able to see what I can do in your life. The third thing that we can see with being a good neighbor that this guy was able to do, this Samaritan, is probably something that maybe your parents or maybe you've heard before, and that's that we have to leave people better than we found them. Leave people better than we found them. This right here is a really good character trait that we can have a lot in life, where if we're able to say, when it comes down to my relationship with people, when it comes down to how I relate to them, how my relationship is, I would love for people to be able to say, I was better after being around them. I was better. I came out as a better person after being around them. And can I make this really practically? I do not want you to feel like you got to play God in here, that you got to transform everybody's lives and you got to fix their finances and their. Can I tell you how good and how pleasing of a thing it is for you to be able to just show up in some of your relationships with a good attitude? Let me just give you two practical things you can do to be able to leave people better than you found them, is by showing up with an attitude that is actually good. And here's what I mean by that. We all know attitudes that we have, that you and I have. Some moments, myself, I'll just speak for me. I've got some moments whenever my attitude is very victim-minded. One where I'm like, I deserve this. You should be doing this for me. I've had it harder than you. I've had more problems. I shouldn't have to do more for you. That's not an attitude that's good. That's not an attitude that helps anybody else out. That's an attitude that does not allow anybody into my life. That's an attitude that pushes people away, where they're like, dang, you got some problems, man. Like, we don't want to be around you. That's not an attitude. You probably have some of those people, you've seen them, the attitudes where they are just super angry, super bitter, always mad all the time. And you're like, do you feel good after being around those people? They're like, no, like I feel like I need to take a shower because that's just rough. If you show up with a good attitude, I'm not talking about the attitude where you're like, everything's fine and everything's perfect. I'm talking about the attitude where you're say, I'm going to try my best. I'm not going to be the person who shows up late to work and then is the first one ready to leave. I'm going to show up with some responsibility. I'm going to show up. I'm going to carry what I need to carry, and I'm going to motivate you. I'm going to tell you you can do this. I'm going to say, come on, let's try our best. Let's do this. That attitude leaves people better than how you found them. Can I tell you one of the biggest ways that you can help people out And I mean this, and this is one of the hardest things if you've been in church for a while, because so much of us want to fix people. One of the best things you can do to be a good neighbor for somebody is to sit down, say, how are you doing? And then shut up, okay? I know, I'm sorry, I said a bad church word there, okay? But I need you to hear the gravity on that. Because sometimes in church, we're like, but I know how to fix. You don't know how to fix them. That's why we come here for Jesus, okay? Let him fix people, all right? For us, what we have to do so much of the time, ask how people are doing and just listen. So much of the time, I can just tell you this. I don't know if you understand this. We literally are in a world right now where we do not have enough people that listen, that are good neighbors, to the point where we have to pay people to just sit there and listen. You understand that's what so much of therapy is? It's just somebody being able to sit there and listen and not interrupt us with, I had the same thing happen to me once. Like, no. Stop. Just listen. Not I have a scripture verse for that. No. Hey, I have a podcast. This will answer all your problems. Just stop. Just be quiet. Just listen. I'm telling you what I as a pastor do with so many, where I just will be able to say, hey, I'm going to just sit here with you, and I'm going to be here in the middle of this with you. And if there's a specific way you want me to help, I'll do my best to. But most of the time, what we need for one another to be a good neighbor, the emotional equivalent for what the Samaritan did for this Jewish man, we sit down, we ask, we listen, and we stay. This is what being such a good neighbor can be for somebody else. Can you just imagine for a second what that would be like for you and I? Because I want you to hear this. I know the pressure of this, of just, hey, you got to be a good neighbor. Can I just zoom out for a second? What I'm describing to you is what Jesus has done for us. I'm not telling you to do something that is some far-fetched reach, some crazy thing. If you haven't heard this message, let me tell it to you right now. Each and every one of us, day after day, have been in a spot where we have been trapped by sin, overwhelmed by the weight of it, where we cannot get out of it. And there was a God who saw us quite literally like that Jewish man who was on the side of the street, in a spot where we didn't know if we could ever get out, where we could ever move forward. And there was a God who said, I will step in. I will pick them up. I will take care of them. I will bring them back to health. That is what our God speaks to us. Our God is the ultimate one who steps up as our neighbor to be able to say, I want to be there in your life. I want to be there. And I need you to catch this. When God is a neighbor to us and we have allowed him into our hearts, the response is such an overflowing level of love that I can't help but be able to give that to somebody else. Quite frankly, if I don't do something with it, it means I haven't fully received it, or I don't truly want it, or don't think I need it. This whole thing of being a neighbor to someone else is as we continue with the flow of God's love. We continue to multiply what he's done in our lives. This isn't some crazy thing. This is just us doing what Jesus has done for us already. So can I ask you, I just want you to close your eyes as we prepare to finish some of our message here. I want you to just think if there's at least one person right now in your life, one person that you're going, yeah, I probably need to be a good neighbor to them. I've probably been hiding, isolating, keeping myself back, saying, you know what, I just don't know that I want to be there. I think probably throughout a message like this, there might be somebody at work, maybe somebody that on your commute you pass, you walk by every day, and God's saying, I don't need you to do everything. I need you to do something. I need you to be able to have a heart posture of saying, do I have to, instead of saying, can I? Instead of saying, are they my neighbor? Us proactively looking and saying, won't you be my neighbor? Won't you be somebody that I can love, that I can care for? Because it's the same God that we have. But I want to just speak to another group of you before we pray and we close. I realize that this message might be one where you're hearing it and you're like, okay, that sounds great, but I need to fully accept that first. I need you to know there's nothing you have to do to earn God's love or acceptance. There's nothing you can do to impress him. There's nothing you can do to be able to show him you're worth it. He already decided that you are. He already chose you. He already demonstrated his love for you. So if you've never made the decision to follow Jesus, or maybe you've walked completely away and you're saying, I don't even know where I'm at, but I need to recommit, and I need to choose, and I need to speak clearly and make the decision and have a define the relationship moment where I am saying, this is it. He's my God. I'm following him. I'm giving my life to him. If that's a decision you need to make right now, I'm just going to ask you if you could just slip up your hand just so that I could see it. so that I know that we could pray together right now. This is such an important moment that we get to have together, a moment that we get to choose Jesus. I want all of us with our eyes closed, I want you to just see right now this moment between you and God. Whether or not you have your hand raised or not, I want all of us to repeat this prayer. If this is something you need to pray, I want you to make this true, make this real for you. Everyone together, repeat this prayer after me. Say, Jesus, I'm choosing you right now. I believe you died on a cross and you came back to life. I believe in you. Forgive me of my sins, everything I've done wrong. I want to have a relationship with you right now and for forever. Amen.